Alright, good evening everyone. This is Dreaming Crow coming back at you doing a quick video for you today. We will be discussing the general topic on doll magic, or what some people would refer to as voodoo dolls, and what materials you will be needing, as well as some of the basic usages up to this point. Again, before we jump into that though, I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick reminder to hit that like button down below if you enjoy the content that I'm putting out. Also, please leave me comments down below and let me know if there's anything in particular that you have a question in regards to this video or any of my other videos. Again, also, if you are not a subscriber, hit that button down below there, please, and I would appreciate that. Of course, if you already are a subscriber, I do totally appreciate that you are already subscribing to my channel, and I thank you very much. And so we're just going to go ahead and jump into the topic today really quick. And again, this video is regarding doll magic, or what some people would refer to as the voodoo doll. And this is going to be the first video series that I do on doll magic, and it's just going to cover some general topic on it. This is not going to have anything to do with any particular type of doll magic in specific, although I will have a number of examples throughout the discussion for you. However, again, we're going to talk about the brief history materials you're going to need to invest in, and then all the follow-up videos after this are going to either talk about a specific benefit such as protection, healing, attraction, anything like that, and I'll even be doing one on malicious intent at some point. Historically, doll magic has been around for several thousand years though, and it's actually been found to have dated all the way back to countries such as India, Chaldea, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, basically throughout that entire part of the world. In Greece, poppets were very widely used in magical traditions, especially to bind deities for protective purposes, for one's home and one's village where they lived. But again, most people, when they think of poppet magic or doll magic, they tend to think of voodoo and the voodoo tradition. So actually, voodoo doll magic gets its roots from their African ancestry, and this is both in terms of beneficial and malicious purposes. And these techniques have been employed successfully and integrated into their tribal sorcery practices for a great amount of generations. Today, however, the poppet, again, is sometimes referred to as a voodoo doll. And a poppet is really a figurine that has been made to represent a person or animal, and is often used in ritual practices to effect change through sympathetic magic. And for those of us who are not familiar with what sympathetic magic is, sympathetic magic works on the principles of similarity and associated contact. For example, attracts and affects like. And that a person or object is then magically affected by doing something to the representation of that person or object in place, and then affecting them in another place. So again, the purpose of the voodoo doll. Poppets can be made and are generally made from a variety of materials. Today, we generally see that most poppets are made of cloth, but in the past, poppets were not very limited as far as what types of material they were made out of. You can generally get roots and carve them, grasses, corn husk, fruit, wood, paper, again, cloth, mud, wax, metal. Any of these combinations can also be used together. For instance, some people will make their poppets out of cloth and wood, like little sticks and arms for legs. Depending on the material you use, though, however, you need to generally make that into the shape of a human or a person representing the intended target. And the poppet can sometimes, or is sometimes dressed also to represent that target. Okay. Ideally, when you're making a poppet, though, you want to link that poppet to with its target. And I use target basically, to represent any a person, whether it's for beneficial intent or malicious intent, really. If you want to term them as subject, for beneficial, you can do that by all means. But this is often done through fetish items, which are secured to link the poppet, to the intended target. And by fetish items, we usually mean blood or saliva, semen or other sexual fluids, hair, fingernail clippings. It's in the past, it wasn't uncommon for a person to secure a personal garment that belonged to the individual, and then that poppet would be made out of that material, or that material would be secured to the poppet or stuffed inside the poppet in order to establish a psychic link to the subject that we're looking to affect. Remember also that the doll in magic, though, is it represents a material base through which the sorcerer is able to manipulate energies around the victim or the subject. Today, though, most dolls that we see on the market that are for like gag gifts and stuff like that, they're generally stuffed with a lot of fillers like cotton and fiber filling and whatnot. And there is a very popular voodoo doll on the market that, if you want to buy for your magical purposes, can be secured through various suppliers. These dolls are generally, again, filled with just junk filling, again, cotton fiber, threading, bits of fabric and whatnot. There's no real ingredients or real stuffing as far as what we would intend to stuff a voodoo doll with. However, a lot of practitioners that do employ doll magic and that do prefer to make their own dolls generally will stuff the doll with something of intent, say like herbs, stones, other ingredients. Just remember that the larger you make the doll, the more stuffing you're going to need. And so if you do start running short on your herbs and whatnot, certainly replacing that stuffing with fiber filling or paper, cotton balls, is going to be something necessary that you may have to do. Again, you can still collect, if you can still collect a garment or something else personal from the victim, placing that within the doll would be beneficial as well. Okay. If you do create a healing doll for the patient, for a patient, I should say, don't be dishonest in securing this person's garment by any chance. You may want to ask them for that as opposed to just taking it. And if you do belong to a coven or some type of group, and they find out that you're stealing people's garments and making dolls out of them, that's going to reflect poorly upon you as a practitioner within that group. So you probably don't want to be doing that whatsoever. Finally, photographs are very commonplace items to stuff into dolls, or you can place them on the outside. Generally inside, though, is where you would end up placing them. And that will also depend on the material in which you make your doll. Again, I'm assuming that you're making this out of cloth as opposed to carving it out of wood or something like that. However, a lot of people don't like to have their picture taken. Some people are just camera shy or whatever the situation may be. However, we do have cellular phones nowadays, people. I mean, how difficult is it to say, "Oops, I accidentally took a picture of you. I didn't mean to do that. Let me erase that, and then not erase it at all." I mean, think creatively on this. If you need to get a picture of somebody for using it in doll magic. Now, when creating your doll, you do need to think again of its intended purpose, and that intended purpose is going to reflect the material base that you use largely to create the doll from. Because this material base will have an effect on what types of devices and methods you use or employ upon the doll. For instance, if you are making a doll out of wood and you're carving it out of wood, more than likely you're not going to be sticking pins inside of a doll, made of wood. That's not going to work. You're going to have to choose things more like bladed objects, blunt objects, stuff like that, in order to affect the doll in that case. However, if you do end up making a doll out of wood, understand that a wooden doll is going to stand up to things like fire a little bit more than, say, something made out of wax or clay. So again, wooden dolls, you're going to be using like coffin nails, iron nails, blades, stuff like that, and other materials. Pins will probably work just fine. Generally, I do prefer to make, again, my dolls out of cloth, and I like the idea of making them a little bit larger, usually about the size of a, Barbie doll, might be about the size that I generally make mine. If I intend to keep it around for a while, say for something like protection use, I'm going to generally secure a box, like a keepsake box you can usually buy at Hobby Lobby or Michael's, something like that. Even Walmart has them. Something small enough that you can actually put the doll into would be, great. So kind of adjust your size a little bit, and depending on what you want to do. Again, to me, something a little bit bigger is easier to use, and again, as I stated before, the downside to making something larger is you're going to require more stuffing to finish it. Now, when or if you intend to make your dolls out of cloth, make sure that you secure enough cloth for this. Generally, when you go out and you buy cloth from places like Walmart, Joann Fabrics, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, anything like, any of those types of places, you're going to buy cloth by the yard, and cloth such as cotton and felt work really well when you're making voodoo dolls, and generally something like that usually costs maybe like $3 a yard. So, go ahead and, check out those places as far as your cloth goes. And that should pretty much be about like right around the cost. Obviously, if you're buying like velvet or silk, something like that, you're going to be spending more money. You want to try to get a bulk of fabric and have enough fabric to make a number of dolls from, as opposed to just one or something like that. I do recommend something like, I do have cloth swatches here. These are manufactured by Fat Quarter and obtained through Walmart. Here's just a variety of colors here. These are about the size of 18 by 21 inches and run the cost of about 97 cents. Okay, so with that, I mean, it's not quite a yard, it's probably about like half a yard, give or take. But with something like this, depending on how big you make your dolls, you can probably get 3 or 4 dolls out of one of these. So you don't have to break the bank when you make your dolls, but depending on what you're going to make, get a variety of colors. Here we have gold, orange, green, pink, brown, purple, and red. They didn't have any black and white, unfortunately, at the time when I purchased these. But try to get a selection of cloth, and this does keep well. So if you do end up even if you do end up purchasing a bit of cloth, it does hold for a while, and it would be good to have it on hand for future projects. Again, you don't need to purchase, or I'm sorry, you don't need to have a pattern when it comes to making these dolls. Simply just folding the cloth in half lengthwise and cutting the basic shape of a person, it works just fine. If you want to say or prefer to cut the shape of, say, a gingerbread man, we all know what gingerbread men look like. That works out quite well also. Of course, when you're buying your fabric, you also want to make sure that you have a good amount of thread. Okay, and again, your basic thread is all you really need. Green thread here, you get about 200 yards of thread for about $2.49. So pick up thread. Again, your basic colors are all that you're going to need: white, black, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and get a brown in there. And you're really not going to need anything less than that. Get something all-purpose. Okay, don't spend $3.50, $4 on silk thread or anything like that, or stuff needed for embroidery. Just all-purpose thread is going to work. Okay. Now, when you create your dolls, you need to think of what is going to be your main focus or intent of that doll. And generally, the thread represents a secondary intent. So in this case, let's say we were going to create a doll for attracting love. We might use a pink fabric with a pink thread. That would be just very, very basic. Okay, and then we would stuff that with our herbs and anything else that we're going to intend. If we're not looking for a particular, attracting a particular person, we probably wouldn't put anything, any kind of link in there, specifically like a photograph or anything like that. However, an alternative to this might be using, say, instead of pink fabric with pink thread, you might change your thread to white. So pink fabric with white thread the threading would symbolize something like purity or healing or innocence in that sense. Or you could change that that threading to red to add a bit of passion and energy to a relationship. You might also want to, instead of just using pink fabric, look for an alternative. For instance, a white fabric with pink and red hearts on it could also be used for attracting, a love relationship, in this particular sense. Or you could do, again, the same color fabric with, again, white. That might be also a representation of healing. Um, Gold might be a representation of, having success in love. So kind of symbolize the thread with your secondary intent with what you're going for. However, just as a side note, of course, the most important part of the doll making process is to be thinking about the doll's intent and purpose. So as you are cutting this doll, as you are sewing it and threading it, and as you are stuffing it, your entire mindset needs to be set on what is the purpose of this doll. Again, if we go back to our doll that we're using to attract love, you might imagine what it would feel like to be taking long walks with, a person that you're in love with through the city park or down the beach. You might, imagine having conversations with the person over dinner. Um, you're basically putting your intent into the doll the entire time that you're making it. Again, from cut and stitch to stuffing, and to the very ending when you finally stitch that up with the last stitch. Everything needs to be on that intent. Don't feel like you're being stupid by talking to a doll this whole time. Um, this is a very necessary process. The more energy you put into this doll, and the more focused your energy, the better your results are going to be. If at any point, though, you do find yourself not focused, I would suggest that you put the doll down and come back at a later time when your head is much more clear. So you probably don't want to be doing something like this when you're saying, watching TV or something like that. Be focused on your project at that time. Once it's complete, you do want to give the doll a name and some very basic instructions. For instance, if you were creating the doll for, say, a healing purpose, you might say, hey, your name is Jane Doe, and your purpose is to, heal Jane Doe. It doesn't have to be anything big. It doesn't have to be anything long. Just a simple command. You could make a doll for protection and say your name is Jane Doe, and you're going to travel safely, for instance. Your name is Jane Doe, and you are going to get a job. Let's say if you did a doll for employment purposes or money drawing or something like that. The next thing you want to make sure that you're doing when you make your doll is position your doll based on purpose. Okay, and this is very important as well. So if you make yourself a doll in order to study better because you're in college, well, you might place that doll in front of, reading a particular book, especially a book on a subject you might be studying in college. So, whatever that might be, just open up a book and place it in front of the doll. That would be beneficial in that sense. If you create one for money, you might make yourself a money bowl and then place a doll sitting or standing on top of a money bowl that has coin in it to show that you're successful. That might be another suggestion as well. And then, of course, when it comes to disposing of the doll, you always want to remove the name from the doll. This is, again, very simple. You just say, hey, you are no longer Jane Doe or you are not Jane Doe. And that's, again, this is when you're disposing of the doll. You no longer need it, and you don't want to accidentally cause any type of malicious harm to the person, especially if the doll is beneficial. So you unname the doll at that point. You remove its contact with that particular person, and then you deconstruct the doll. You remove everything from its stitchings, its fillings, all of its features that you placed on it, and then you dispose of the ingredients. It can be simple as just putting it in the trash, but I know a lot of people that are kind of particular with burying the contents at that point. Once everything is dismantled, you don't want to reuse that material, especially say if it was for a healing ritual. In this case, you really wouldn't be dismantling the doll anyways for that, and I'll be covering that in a healing with doll magic at a later time. But lay the ingredients down into the hole. You may want to lay some banishing powder on top of it, and then fill the hole. That way, everything just decomposes as it should. And with that, this video was just a little bit longer than I wanted, but I had to hash out a few things there. So we're going to go ahead and call this video an end. And until next time, just stay tuned with my upcoming videos by subscribing to my channel. And as they become available, you'll be notified through email. And with that, I will see you folks later. Until my next video on doll magic, take care and infernal blessings, and have a good night. Bye.